My older sister held my rescue inhaler while I was having an asthma attack, saying, "I don't have asthma, so you're not allowed to have it either." I begged her, and she laughed, already gasping, "Loser." I stayed silent. That was 5 days ago. This morning, she trembled in court when the judge. The edges of my vision were turning gray when Vanessa finally dropped the inhaler on the carpet. Not handed it to me. Dropped it. Like feeding scraps to a dog. I grabbed it with shaking hands, pressed it to my lips, and felt the medication open my airways in slow, merciful increments. My older sister stood in the doorway of my bedroom, arms crossed, watching me struggle to breathe with the same expression she wore when our mom asked her to take out the trash. "Drama queen," she muttered before leaving. 5 days ago, that moment. I'm writing this now because the judge read her sentence 2 hours ago, and I need to document everything while the details are still sharp. Not for revenge, that's already happened. For clarity. For anyone who's ever felt powerless. But I should start earlier. Context matters. My name is Marcus, and I'm 23. Vanessa is 28. We grew up in suburban Connecticut, in one of those families that looks perfect from the outside, 2-story colonial, well-maintained lawn, parents who showed up to school events. Our father is a corporate attorney. Our mother teaches 3rd grade. They're good people who somehow raised a daughter incapable of basic empathy. I've had asthma since I was 6. Severe, exercise-induced, with seasonal triggers that turn bad air quality days into legitimate medical emergencies. I carry a rescue inhaler everywhere. Vanessa knows this. Everyone in our family knows this. She's never had a serious health problem in her life. The attack happened on a Tuesday evening. I'd been working in my room, I'm a freelance graphic designer, mostly remote work, when the tightness started in my chest. Spring pollen counts were high that week. I'd forgotten to close my window during my afternoon run, and the delayed reaction hit me around 7. I keep my inhaler on my nightstand. Always. Except that night, it wasn't there. The panic that comes with an asthma attack isn't just physical. It's psychological. Your body betrays you. Each breath becomes a conscious effort, and you start calculating how many more you have left before things get genuinely dangerous. I tore through my desk drawers, checked my jacket pockets, even looked under the bed. Nothing. Vanessa had been home all day. She'd graduated with a business degree 3 years ago, but her job at a marketing firm had downsized her department 6 months back. Since then, she'd been living with our parents again, oscillating between half-hearted job applications and binge-watching reality shows in the living room. Her room was next to mine. I went to her door. Knocked. The wheezing had started by then, that high-pitched whistle that means your airways are narrowing. "Yeah?" she called. I opened the door. She was sitting on her bed, scrolling through her phone. My rescue inhaler sat on her dresser, right next to her jewelry box. "That's mine," I managed. Speaking was getting harder. She glanced at the inhaler, then back at her phone. "Is it? Vanessa? Please." My chest was tightening. "I need it." She stood up, walked to the dresser, and picked up the inhaler. Examined it like she was considering a purchase. The fluorescent light from her ceiling fan caught the blue plastic casing. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I don't have asthma. Never needed one of these. So why should you?" I stared at her. My lungs were burning now, each breath a shallow gasp. "What?" "I've been thinking about it," she continued, voice casual. "Mom and Dad always made such a big deal about your condition. Poor Marcus, can't run too hard. Poor Marcus, needs special medication. Meanwhile, I've been perfectly healthy my entire life, and nobody cares." "Vanessa," I couldn't finish the sentence. The room was tilting slightly. "Already gasping, loser?" She laughed. Actually laughed. "Maybe if you tried harder, you wouldn't need this crutch." I reached for the inhaler. She held it higher, out of my reach. I'm 5'9". She's 5'11". The geometry of the situation was cruelly simple. My vision started tunneling. Gray at the edges, darkness creeping inward. I thought about lunging for it, but my legs felt weak. Coordination was slipping. I dropped to my knees instead. Not dramatically, my body just gave up on standing. "Please," I whispered. She looked down at me for what felt like an eternity. Then she dropped the inhaler on the carpet between us and walked past me, out of the room. I heard her footsteps descending the stairs. The TV clicked on in the living room. I used the inhaler immediately. 2 puffs. Waited. 2 more. The relief came slowly, agonizingly slowly, but it came. I sat on her floor for maybe 10 minutes, just breathing. My hands were still shaking. My throat ached. But I was alive, and my airways were opening, and that was enough. I went back to my room. Locked the door. Stared at the ceiling. That was 5 days ago. I didn't tell our parents immediately. That probably sounds stupid, but I had my reasons. Vanessa had a history of twisting narratives. When we were teenagers, she once told our mother that I'd stolen $20 from her wallet, completely fabricated, and I'd been grounded for a week despite my protests. She'd admitted the lie months later, laughing about it like it was a harmless prank. If I accused her of something this serious, she'd deny it. She'd say I was being dramatic, that I'd misplaced my inhaler and was blaming her out of spite. Our parents would be caught in the middle, and knowing them, they'd probably try to smooth things over with some forced apology from her and a lecture to me about family harmony. I needed proof. Evidence. Something undeniable. The next morning, I went to Target and bought 3 items: a small motion-activated camera that looked like a phone charger, a lockbox for my medications, and a notebook. The camera cost $40. The lockbox was $15. The notebook was $2. I installed the camera on my dresser that afternoon, angled toward the door and nightstand. The lockbox went in my closet, secured with a 4-digit code only I knew. I moved all my medications there, not just the rescue inhaler, but my daily preventive inhaler, my antihistamines, even my melatonin. Then I waited. Vanessa noticed the changes immediately. That evening, she appeared in my doorway around dinner time. I was editing a logo for a client, headphones on, but I saw her in my peripheral vision. "What's with the Fort Knox setup?" she asked. I pulled off my headphones. "What?" "The box. In your closet." She'd been in my room. Of course she had. "Just organizing," I said. She studied me for a moment, eyes narrowed. "You're being paranoid." "Maybe." She left without another word. But I could tell I'd irritated her. Vanessa hated being denied access to anything. When we were kids, she used to read my diary just because I'd asked her not to. Control was her currency. I checked the camera footage that night. Sure enough, she'd entered my room around noon while I was out grocery shopping. She'd gone straight to my nightstand, found nothing, then checked my desk drawers. The frustration on her face was visible even in the grainy footage. I saved the video file. Backed it up to 3 different locations. 2 days passed quietly. I kept my medications locked up, kept my door locked when I left the house, and kept detailed notes about everything: times, dates, Vanessa's comments and behaviors. She was getting testier. Snapping at our parents during meals. Making pointed remarks about my paranoia whenever we were in the same room. On Thursday evening, things escalated. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she walked in. Our parents were out at a neighborhood dinner party. The house was otherwise empty. "You think you're so smart," she said. I didn't turn around. Just kept pouring water into the coffee maker. "I don't know what you mean." "Hiding your stuff. Acting like I'm some kind of threat." Her voice had an edge to it. "You've always been the victim, haven't you? Poor Marcus with his asthma. Poor Marcus who needs everyone's attention." I turned to face her then. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, backlit by the hallway light. Her expression was cold. "You held my inhaler while I couldn't breathe," I said quietly. "That's not me playing victim. That's you being dangerous." "Dangerous?" She laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're so dramatic." I was making a point. "What point?" "That you're weak. That you always have been." She stepped closer. "Do you know how exhausting it's been, being your sister? Watching mom and dad coddle you your entire life? I've had to work twice as hard for half the attention, all because you have a medical condition." The coffee maker beeped. Steam rose from the carafe. I could feel my heart rate increasing, but my breathing stayed steady. I'd used my preventive inhaler that morning. I was stable. "That's not my fault," I said. "Isn't it?" She was right in front of me now. "You could try harder. You could push through it. But you don't, because it's easier to be the sick kid who gets special treatment." I looked at her, really looked at her. My sister. The person who'd taught me to ride a bike when I was 7, who'd defended me from bullies in middle school, who'd once stayed up all night helping me finish a school project I'd procrastinated on. That person was still in there somewhere, buried under layers of resentment and misplaced anger. But she'd also held my inhaler while I struggled to breathe. And she wasn't sorry. "I'm done with this conversation," I said, and walked past her. She grabbed my arm. "Hard. Don't walk away from me." I pulled free. "Let go, or what?" Her face was flushed now. "You'll run to mom and dad? Tell them your big sister is being mean?" "I'll do what I need to do," I said. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, this thin, cold expression that didn't reach her eyes. "You're pathetic." I went back to my room. Locked the door. Reviewed the kitchen footage from the camera I'd also installed there that morning, hidden in the microwave's digital clock. The entire interaction was captured. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words. "You could try harder. You could push through it." As if asthma was a choice. As if nearly suffocating was a personality flaw I could overcome with sufficient willpower. Around 2 in the morning, I made a decision. Friday morning, I called my cousin Derek. He's 31, a paralegal at a firm in Hartford. We've always been close. He's one of the few family members who never treated my asthma like an inconvenience. Hey Marcus, he answered on the third ring. What's up? I need legal advice, I said. There was a pause. Okay. What kind? I told him everything. The inhaler incident. The camera footage. Vanessa's escalating behavior. He listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, Marcus, what she did could be considered assault. Withholding necessary medical equipment during a health emergency? That's serious. I know. Have you told your parents? Not yet. Why not? I explained my concerns about Vanessa's manipulation tactics, about our parents' tendency to prioritize family peace over accountability. Derek knew them well enough not to argue. All right, he said. Here's what I think. You have evidence. Multiple videos, documented patterns of behavior. If you want to pursue legal action, you probably have a case. But you need to understand what that means. This would involve police reports, possibly criminal charges, and it would tear your family apart. I know, I said again. Are you sure you want to do this? I thought about Vanessa's face as she held my inhaler out of reach. Her laugh. Her complete lack of remorse. Yes, I said. Derek sighed. Okay. Let me make some calls. I'll find out what your options are and get back to you. We hung up. I felt nauseous. This wasn't what I wanted, not really. I wanted my sister to recognize what she'd done. To apologize. To get help for whatever was driving her resentment. But people don't change unless they face consequences. Derek called back 3 hours later. I spoke with a friend who works in the district attorney's office, he said. Based on what you've described, this could potentially be charged as reckless endangerment. Maybe even assault, depending on how the prosecutor interprets the withholding of medical equipment. You'd need to file a police report first. They'd investigate, review your evidence, and decide whether to press charges. Would she go to jail? Probably not for a first offense. More likely probation, mandatory counseling, maybe community service. But it would be on her record. I swallowed hard. What do I need to do? Go to the police station. Bring all your evidence, videos, medical documentation showing your asthma history, any written correspondence or text messages that support your account. Be prepared to give a detailed statement. Okay. Marcus? His voice softened. Are you absolutely sure about this? I closed my eyes. Pictured myself on the floor of Vanessa's room, vision darkening, begging for the medication that could save my life while she watched with indifference. I'm sure, I said. I went to the police station Saturday afternoon. The building was a low, brick structure on Main Street, sandwiched between a pizza place and a dry cleaner. I'd driven past it 1,000 times but never been inside. The officer at the front desk was a woman in her 40s with graying hair pulled into a tight bun. Her name tag read Sergeant Morrison. Can I help you? She asked. I need to file a report, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She handed me a clipboard with forms attached. Have a seat. Fill these out. I sat in a plastic chair near the window and worked through the paperwork. Name, address, date of birth. Description of the incident. I kept it factual, clinical. No emotional language. Just what happened, when it happened, and what evidence I had. When I finished, Sergeant Morrison called me to a small interview room. White walls, fluorescent lighting, a table with 2 chairs. She sat across from me with a notepad. Walk me through what happened, she said. I did. She took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I mentioned the camera footage, her eyebrows rose slightly. You have video evidence? Yes. Multiple angles. I brought a thumb drive with all the files. I slid it across the table. She looked at it, then at me. This is pretty thorough documentation. I wanted to be sure, I said. She spent the next 30 minutes reviewing the footage on a laptop. I watched her face, trying to gauge her reaction. Her expression remained neutral, professional. But when she got to the part where Vanessa held the inhaler above my head while I knelt on the floor, I saw her jaw tighten. Mr. Peterson, she said finally. This is concerning. I'm going to need you to provide a formal written statement. After that, I'll pass this information to the detective unit. They'll investigate and determine whether charges are warranted. How long will that take? Depends on the case load. Could be a few days, could be a couple weeks. I nodded. She leaned forward slightly. I have to ask, have you considered trying to resolve this within your family first? Mediation, therapy, something like that? My sister held my rescue inhaler while I had an asthma attack, I said. She watched me struggle to breathe and laughed. I don't think mediation is going to fix that. Sergeant Morrison studied me for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough. I gave my statement. Signed it. Left the police station with a case number and a strange, hollow feeling in my chest. When I got home, Vanessa was in the living room watching TV. She glanced up when I walked in. "Where were you?" she asked. "Out," I said, and went upstairs. Update 1. The detective called me on Tuesday. His name was Detective Ramirez, and he had a low, gravelly voice that sounded like he'd spent decades in interrogation rooms. "Mr. Peterson, I've reviewed your case file and the evidence you provided. I'd like to ask you some follow-up questions, if you have time." "Of course," I said. We spoke for 20 minutes. He asked about my medical history, my relationship with Vanessa, whether there had been previous incidents of concerning behavior. I answered everything honestly. Told him about the diary incident when we were teenagers, about her pattern of boundary violations, about the escalating resentment over the past year. "Has she made any threats since you filed the report?" he asked. "No. She doesn't know I filed." "You're still living in the same house?" "Yes." He paused. "Mr. Peterson, I'm going to be direct with you. Based on the evidence, we have sufficient grounds to pursue charges. The video footage is particularly compelling. However, cases involving family members can be complicated. I want to make sure you understand what moving forward means." "I understand," I said. "All right. I'll be coordinating with the district attorney's office. You'll likely hear from them within the next few days." "Thank you, Detective." After we hung up, I sat on my bed and tried to process what was happening. This was real. This was actually happening. My sister was going to be charged with a crime because of something I'd reported. The guilt tried to creep in then. That insidious voice that said I was overreacting, that family should protect family, that I should have tried harder to work things out privately. But then I remembered the gray edges of my vision. The burning in my lungs. Her laugh. No. I wasn't overreacting. That evening, Vanessa knocked on my door. I'd kept it locked since the kitchen confrontation, so she couldn't just walk in. "Marcus? Can we talk?" I opened the door. She stood in the hallway, looking oddly uncertain. It was the first time in months I'd seen her without that edge of confidence. "What?" I asked. She faltered. "I wanted to apologize. For the other night. In the kitchen. I was out of line." I studied her face. She looked sincere. But Vanessa was good at looking sincere when it benefited her. "Okay," I said. "That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say?" She shifted her weight, uncomfortable. "I don't know. I've been stressed lately. The job search isn't going well, and I've been taking it out on you. That's not fair." "No, it's not. So we're good?" I almost laughed. "Almost. Vanessa, you held my inhaler while I couldn't breathe. You called me a loser while I begged you for medication that could save my life. Do you really think an apology makes that okay?" Her expression hardened. There it was, the real Vanessa beneath the temporary contrition. I said I was sorry. "What more do you want?" "Accountability," I said. "Real accountability. Not just words because you've decided it's convenient to play nice." "What does that even mean?" "It means you need professional help. Therapy. Something to address why you thought that behavior was acceptable." She stared at me. "You're being ridiculous." "Am I?" "Yes. You're acting like I tried to kill you." "You endangered my life," I said quietly. "Whether you intended to or not, that's what happened." She scoffed. "You're so dramatic. You had your inhaler back in like 2 minutes. 2 minutes is a long time when you can't breathe." "Whatever, Marcus. Enjoy your victim complex." She turned and walked away. I closed my door. Locked it. My hands were shaking. The call from the district attorney's office came Thursday morning. The prosecutor's name was Emily Chen. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp features and an efficient manner that suggested she didn't waste time. "Mr. Peterson, I've reviewed the evidence Detective Ramirez forwarded. I'm calling to inform you that we're moving forward with charges against Vanessa Peterson for reckless endangerment in the second degree." My stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It's a Class A misdemeanor in Connecticut. Carries a maximum sentence of 1 year in jail and a fine up to $2,000, though first offenders rarely receive maximum sentences. More typically, we'd be looking at probation and mandatory counseling." "When will she be charged?" "An arrest warrant has been issued. Officers will execute it within the next 48 hours. I'm giving you advance notice because you're living in the same residence. I'd recommend staying with a friend or family member when the arrest occurs, if possible." "She doesn't know this is happening," I said. "I understand. That's why I'm suggesting you make alternative arrangements." I thanked her and hung up. Then I called Derek. "Can I stay with you for a few days?" I asked. "Of course. What's happening?" I explained. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Pack a bag. I'll come get you in an hour." I threw clothes and toiletries into a duffel bag, grabbed my laptop and medications, and waited. Derek arrived exactly 60 minutes later. I left a note for my parents on the kitchen counter, staying at Derek's for a bit. I'll explain soon. I didn't say goodbye to Vanessa. She was in her room with the door closed, oblivious. Derek lived in a one-bedroom apartment in West Hartford. He insisted I take the bed, he'd sleep on the couch. We ordered Chinese food and spent the evening not talking about what was coming. Instead, we watched basketball and argued good-naturedly about which team would make the playoffs. It felt normal. Safe. The call came Saturday morning. My father's voice was strained. "Marcus, what's going on? The police were just here. They arrested Vanessa." I'd been expecting this, but hearing it still felt surreal. "I know, Dad." "You know? What do you mean you know?" I explained everything. The inhaler incident. The evidence. The police report. The charges. He listened in silence. When I finished, the line was quiet for so long I thought he'd hung up. "Dad? I'm here." His voice was tight. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I knew you'd try to smooth it over. Make her apologize and call it resolved. She's your sister, Marcus. And she endangered my life." "She made a mistake." "No," I interrupted. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. What she did was deliberate. She knew I couldn't breathe, and she withheld my medication anyway. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." I heard my mother's voice in the background, muffled. My father covered the phone. When he came back, his tone had changed, harder, more distant. "Your mother and I are posting her bail. We'd appreciate it if you'd come home so we can discuss this as a family." "I'll come home," I said. "But I'm not dropping the charges." "Marcus, I'll be there in an hour." I hung up. Derek drove me. The house felt different when I walked in, tension hanging in the air like humidity before a storm. My mother was in the living room, eyes red from crying. My father stood near the window, arms crossed. Vanessa sat on the couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. "Marcus," my mother started, voice wavering. "Please tell me there's been some misunderstanding." "There hasn't," I said. Vanessa looked up at me. Her face was pale, eyes hollow. "You called the police on me? You held my inhaler while I couldn't breathe." "I gave it back. After I begged. After you laughed at me." My father stepped forward. "Vanessa has agreed to apologize and seek counseling. We can resolve this without involving the courts." "No," I said. "We can't." "Why not?" My mother's voice cracked. "Why are you doing this?" "Because she needs to face real consequences. An apology isn't enough. It's never been enough with her." Vanessa stood up suddenly. "You're ruining my life over nothing." "Nothing?" I stared at her. "You think nearly killing me is nothing?" "I didn't try to kill you." "Stop being so dramatic." "Then what were you trying to do?" My voice was rising now, adrenaline pushing through the careful calm I'd maintained. "What was the goal, Vanessa? Make me suffer? Prove you had power over me? What?" She opened her mouth, closed it. No answer came. My father rubbed his face. "This is tearing our family apart." "No," I said quietly. "Vanessa did that. I'm just making sure she's held accountable." I left before anyone could respond. Derek was waiting in the car. We didn't speak on the drive back to his apartment. That night, alone in Derek's guest room, I finally cried. Not out of sadness, out of sheer exhaustion. This was the right thing to do. I knew it was. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are different territories entirely. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. Vanessa hired an attorney, some guy our father knew through work. I met with Emily Chen twice before the hearing, going over my testimony and what to expect. "The defense will likely argue this was a misunderstanding," she explained. "That your sister didn't understand the severity of the situation. They'll paint her as someone who made a thoughtless error in judgment, not someone who deliberately endangered you." "Will that work?" "Depends on the judge. And on how well you hold up under questioning." The morning of the hearing, I woke up at 5. Couldn't sleep. Derek made coffee and tried to make small talk, but I could barely focus. My stomach was in knots. The courthouse was downtown, an imposing stone building with pillars flanking the entrance. Emily met me in the lobby. She wore a navy suit and carried a leather briefcase that looked expensive. "Ready?" she asked. "Not really," I admitted. "You'll do fine. Just answer honestly and stay calm." The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a dozen rows of benches. My parents sat on the left side, near Vanessa and her attorney. They didn't look at me when I walked in. The judge was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her nameplate read Judge Patricia Sullivan. The proceedings started. Emily presented the state's case, outlining the charges and playing portions of the camera footage on a monitor facing the judge. Watching it again, seeing myself on the floor, gasping, begging, made my chest tighten. Judge Sullivan's expression remained neutral, but I saw her lean forward during the part where Vanessa held the inhaler out of reach. Then came the defense's turn. Vanessa's attorney was a man in his 50s, polished and articulate. He argued that Vanessa had been going through significant stress due to unemployment and mental health struggles. That she'd made a regrettable error in judgment but had never intended harm. That she'd returned the inhaler within minutes and her brother had suffered no lasting damage. My client recognizes the severity of her actions, he said. She's committed to therapy and has already begun addressing the underlying issues that led to this incident. Imposing criminal penalties would serve no rehabilitative purpose and would only further harm an already struggling young woman. Emily stood for rebuttal. Your Honor, the defendant didn't simply make an error in judgment. She deliberately withheld life-saving medication from her brother during a medical emergency, then mocked him while he struggled to breathe. This wasn't a momentary lapse, it was sustained, cruel behavior captured clearly on video. The defendant has shown no genuine remorse, only regret at being caught. The judge looked at Vanessa. Ms. Peterson, do you have anything you'd like to say? Vanessa stood slowly. She'd dressed conservatively, gray slacks, white blouse, hair pulled back. She looked like someone's assistant manager, respectable and harmless. Your Honor, I deeply regret what happened, she said. Her voice was steady, practiced. I was dealing with a lot of personal struggles, and I took out my frustration on my brother in a way that was completely unacceptable. I've started therapy since then, and I'm committed to becoming a better person. I love my brother, and I never meant to hurt him. It was a good performance. I almost believed her myself. Almost. Judge Sullivan removed her glasses. Ms. Peterson, I've reviewed the evidence in this case thoroughly. What concerns me isn't just the initial incident, though that alone is serious. What concerns me is the pattern of behavior shown in the subsequent videos. Your lack of remorse. Your dismissiveness when confronted. Your continued boundary violations. Vanessa's attorney started to speak. The judge held up a hand. I've heard the defense's argument about mental health and stress, she continued. And while I appreciate that these factors may have contributed to your behavior, they don't excuse it. You withheld necessary medical equipment from someone experiencing a potentially life-threatening emergency. That's not a mistake. That's assault. My heart was pounding. However, Judge Sullivan said, I also recognize that you have no prior criminal record and that incarceration would likely serve no rehabilitative purpose in this case. Here it comes, I thought. Probation. Maybe community service. A slap on the wrist dressed up as justice. The judge looked directly at Vanessa. I'm sentencing you to 1 year of probation, with the following conditions. You will complete 200 hours of community service at a medical facility or health-related nonprofit. You will attend mandatory therapy sessions twice, monthly with a licensed counselor, with progress reports submitted to the court quarterly. You will have no contact with the victim except in the presence of a court-approved mediator, should both parties consent to mediation. And you will complete a course on disability awareness and medical ethics. Vanessa's face went pale. Additionally, the judge continued, if you violate any terms of your probation, you will serve 90 days in county jail. Do you understand these terms? Yes, Your Honor, Vanessa whispered. Then this court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. I walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight. Emily Chen followed. That was a good outcome, she said. Judge Sullivan doesn't usually impose conditions that strict for first offenses. She was shaking, I said. Vanessa. When the judge read the sentence. Good. Maybe it'll sink in. My parents were standing near their car. My mother was crying. My father had his arm around her shoulders, looking 10 years older than he had 3 weeks ago. I started toward them, but my father shook his head. A small gesture. Clear meaning, not now. I stopped. Watched them help Vanessa into the backseat. Drive away without a backward glance. Derek appeared beside me. You okay? I don't know, I said honestly. Update 2. It's been 4 months since the hearing. I'm writing this final update because people have been asking what happened next, and because I've had time to process everything. Vanessa completed her community service at a hospice facility in Hartford. According to Derek, who heard from our aunt, she spent most of her hours filing paperwork and organizing supply closets. Not glamorous work, but she showed up consistently. That's something, I guess. She's also been attending therapy. I don't know the details, client confidentiality and all, but her therapist submits quarterly reports to the court confirming attendance and engagement. Judge Sullivan reviews them. So far, no violations. My parents and I have spoken twice since the hearing. Brief, stilted conversations where we discuss logistics, who gets which family heirlooms, whether I'm coming home for holidays. The answer to that last one is no. Not yet. Maybe not ever. We're in family therapy ourselves, trying to rebuild something from the wreckage, but it's slow going. They're hurt. I understand that. In their minds, I chose the law over family. But from my perspective, I chose safety over enabling. Sometimes those choices look the same from different angles. Vanessa and I haven't spoken directly. The no contact order is still in effect, and honestly, I'm grateful for it. I'm not ready to face her. Maybe someday I will be. Maybe someday she'll have done enough work on herself that a conversation would be productive rather than destructive. But that day isn't today. I moved into my own apartment in August. 1 bedroom, decent neighborhood, close to a park where I can run on low pollen days. I've been working on building a life that doesn't revolve around family trauma or legal proceedings. It's harder than it sounds. Trauma has a way of seeping into everything, coloring your perceptions and decisions in ways you don't notice until you're already deep into a thought pattern. Therapy has helped. I found a good counselor who specializes in family dysfunction and medical trauma. We talk about boundaries, about guilt, about the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. They're not the same thing, she reminds me. You can forgive someone and still choose not to let them back into your life. Forgiveness is about releasing your own anger. Reconciliation is about rebuilding trust. One doesn't require the other. I'm working on the forgiveness part. Some days are better than others. Last week, I received a letter. Handwritten, my name on the envelope in Vanessa's distinctive sloping script. It had been forwarded through Emily Chen's office. Part of the no contact order provisions allow written communication with legal supervision. I almost didn't open it. Let it sit on my kitchen counter for 3 days, just staring at it whenever I walked past. Finally, curiosity won. The letter was 2 pages long. I won't reproduce it entirely, some things should stay private, but the essence was this. Vanessa acknowledged what she'd done. Really acknowledged it, without qualifications or excuses. She explained that therapy had helped her understand the depth of resentment she'd been carrying, the toxic patterns she'd developed, the ways she'd weaponized my vulnerability to feel powerful in her own powerlessness. She apologized. Not the performative apology from the courtroom, but something raw. She wrote that she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again, that she'd accept that consequence, but that she wanted me to know she was working on becoming someone who would never do something like that again. The letter ended with a single line, "You deserved better from me. I'm sorry I didn't give you that." I cried reading it. Not cathartic tears, messy, complicated tears that mixed relief and grief and residual anger into something I couldn't quite name. I haven't responded yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. That's the thing about healing, it's not linear, and it doesn't come with a clear endpoint. You just wake up one day and realize you've gone a whole week without thinking about the thing that used to consume you. Then another week. Then a month. I'm not there yet. But I'm getting closer. The reason I'm sharing this story isn't to shame my sister or to portray myself as some kind of hero. I'm not. I'm just someone who made a difficult choice and lived with the consequences. But I've received messages from people who read my original posts, people dealing with their own family dysfunction, their own situations where someone they love is hurting them and they don't know how to respond. So this last part is for them. If someone in your life is endangering you, physically, emotionally, psychologically, you're not obligated to protect them from consequences. You're not betraying family by choosing safety. You're not being dramatic by taking threats seriously. People will tell you to forgive. To let it go. To remember that family is forever. Those people usually aren't the ones struggling to breathe while someone they trust holds their medication out of reach. Set boundaries. Document everything. Seek help from people outside the situation who can see it clearly. And if legal intervention is necessary, don't let guilt stop you. The people who say family doesn't call the police on family are often the same people who enable abuse to continue unchecked. You deserve safety. You deserve respect. You deserve relationships that don't require you to minimize your own harm for someone else's comfort. It took me 23 years to learn that. I hope it takes you less time. This morning, I went for a run. The weather was perfect, cool, clear, low pollen count. I pushed myself a little harder than usual, felt my lungs working, felt strong. My rescue inhaler sat in my pocket, easily accessible. I didn't need it, but knowing it was there gave me confidence. Halfway through, I stopped at a park bench to catch my breath. Not because I was having an attack, just because I could. Because breathing is something I get to do now without fear of someone taking it away. That's what healing looks like sometimes. Not grand gestures or dramatic reconciliations. Just the simple, quiet ability to breathe freely and know you're safe. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, watching joggers pass, listening to birds, feeling the sun on my face. Then I stood up, adjusted my headphones, and ran home. One foot in front of the other. That's all any of us can do. One breath at a time. 3 weeks after receiving Vanessa's letter, something unexpected happened. I was at a coffee shop near my apartment, working on a logo redesign for a startup client, when someone tapped my shoulder. I looked up. A woman in her mid-20s stood there, athletic build, dark hair pulled into a ponytail. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. "Marcus Peterson?" she asked. "Yeah? I'm Rachel Chen. Emily's younger sister." She gestured to the empty chair across from me. "Mind if I sit?" I closed my laptop. "Go ahead." She sat, wrapping her hands around a paper cup of tea. "Emily mentioned your case to me. Not the details, she's very professional about confidentiality, but the general situation. I wanted to talk to you about something." "Okay," I said slowly. "I'm a respiratory therapist at Hartford Hospital," she explained. "I work primarily with asthma patients, COPD cases, people with chronic breathing conditions." "Your sister's community service?" "She was assigned to our hospice facility. Different building, but same hospital system." My stomach tightened. "Is she causing problems?" "No, actually. The opposite." Rachel took a sip of her tea. "She's been surprisingly engaged. She asks questions about patient care, about respiratory equipment, about what happens when people can't breathe. Real questions, not performative ones." I didn't know what to say to that. "Last week," Rachel continued, "she asked if she could shadow me for a few hours. Completely voluntary, beyond her required service. I said yes. She met my eyes. Marcus, I watched her help a teenager through an asthma attack. This kid came into the ER, couldn't breathe, terrified. Vanessa held his hand, talked him through using his inhaler, stayed calm while he panicked. Afterward, she went to the bathroom and cried for 20 minutes. I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. But something adjacent to it. Possibility, maybe." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because healing doesn't happen in straight lines," Rachel said. "And because I think she's genuinely trying. That doesn't erase what she did to you. Nothing can. But I thought you should know that the consequences you imposed? They might actually be working." She finished her tea, stood up, and handed me a business card. "If you ever want to talk more, or if you ever decide you want mediated contact with your sister, Emily has my information. No pressure. Just an option." She left. I sat there for a long time, staring at the business card, thinking about Vanessa crying in a hospital bathroom after helping someone breathe. I didn't reach out to Rachel. Not then. But the conversation stayed with me, lodging itself in the back of my mind like a splinter I couldn't quite extract. 2 months later, my mother called. We'd been doing our awkward check-ins every few weeks, surface-level conversations about weather and work, carefully avoiding anything substantial. But this call felt different from the moment I answered. "Marcus, I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice was tight. "Your father had a heart attack." The world tilted. "What?" "He's stable now. They did an angioplasty, put in 2 stents. He'll recover, but," her voice broke. "Marcus, I thought we were going to lose him." "When did this happen?" "Yesterday morning. He'd been having chest pain for a week but didn't tell anyone. You know how he is about doctors." I did. My father was the type to tough things out, to ignore symptoms until they became undeniable. I'd inherited my stubbornness from him. "Which hospital?" I asked. She told me. "Hartford General. 20 minutes from my apartment." "I'm coming," I said. "Vanessa's here," she said quietly. "At the hospital. I know about the no contact order, but I'll be there in 30 minutes." I drove faster than I should have. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My father, the man who'd taught me to throw a baseball, who'd stayed up all night helping me build a model rocket in 5th grade, who'd quietly slipped me $20 before college dates, had nearly died, and I'd been so consumed with family warfare that I hadn't even known he was sick. The cardiac unit was on the 4th floor. I found my mother in the waiting area, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She stood when she saw me, and I hugged her. She felt fragile in my arms. "Where is he?" I asked. "Room 412. He's sleeping, but you can go in." "And Vanessa?" "Cafeteria. I asked her to give us some time." I found my father's room. He lay in a hospital bed, monitors beeping softly, and 4 in his arm. His face looked gray, older. Vulnerable in a way I'd never associated with him. I sat in the chair beside his bed. His eyes opened after a moment. "Marcus," he said. His voice was hoarse. "Don't talk," I said. "Just rest." "No." He shifted slightly, wincing. "I need to say this. I've been a coward." "Dad, listen." His hand found mine. "What happened with Vanessa? I wanted to fix it the easy way. Smooth it over, pretend it wasn't serious. Because confronting how badly she messed up meant confronting how badly your mother and I failed as parents." Tears were building behind my eyes. "You didn't fail. We did. We saw the warning signs. The manipulation, the need for control. We told ourselves it was just sibling rivalry. We were wrong. He squeezed my hand weakly. You did the right thing, taking legal action. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't. I couldn't speak. Just held his hand and let the tears come. Your sister's in pain, Marcus. Real pain. But that doesn't excuse what she did to you. Both things can be true. I know, I managed. I'm proud of you, he said. For setting boundaries. For protecting yourself. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. We sat in silence for a while, just breathing together. Eventually, he drifted back to sleep. I stayed until a nurse came in to check his vitals. In the hallway, I nearly collided with Vanessa. We froze. 3 feet apart, breaking the no-contact order just by proximity. She looked different than I remembered. Thinner. Her hair was shorter, face free of makeup. She wore jeans and a Hartford Hospice volunteer shirt. I was just leaving, she said quickly. Wait. The word came out before I could think about it. How long have you been here? Since last night. When Mom called. She looked at the floor. I wanted to be here. In case, she couldn't finish the sentence. Me too, I said. We stood there in the fluorescent-lit hallway, surrounded by the ambient sounds of hospital machinery and distant conversations. All the things I'd planned to say to her someday, all the careful speeches I'd rehearsed in therapy, evaporated. I got your letter, I said finally. She looked up, surprised. I didn't know if you'd read it. I read it. And? And it doesn't fix what happened. But it's a start. She nodded slowly. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I wanted you to know I'm trying. Rachel Chen told me, I said. About the hospital. The teenager with the asthma attack. Vanessa's face crumpled slightly. He reminded me of you. Same age you were when your asthma got bad. Same terror in his eyes. And I understood what I'd done to you in a way I hadn't before. How scared you must have been. I was terrified, I said quietly. I know. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I know that's not enough, but I'm sorry. A doctor walked past us, giving us a curious glance. We were blocking the hallway, 2 siblings frozen in the middle of a conversation years overdue. The no-contact order expires in 8 months, I said. After that, if you want to try family mediation, I'll consider it. Not forgiveness. Not going back to how things were. Just seeing if we can build something new. Really? Her voice was barely a whisper. Really? But you have to keep doing the work. Therapy, community service, all of it. And if you ever, cross a boundary like that again, we're done. Permanently. I understand, she said. Thank you, Marcus. I nodded and walked past her, toward the elevator. My hands were still shaking, but my breathing was steady. My father came home from the hospital a week later. I visited him twice during his recovery, short visits where we talked about baseball and his new dietary restrictions and avoided anything too heavy. Mom hovered, bringing him heart-healthy meals and monitoring his medications with the same intensity she'd once brought to PTA meetings. Vanessa and I didn't speak again. The encounter at the hospital had been a moment out of time, circumstances forcing proximity. But we'd established something there, a fragile possibility of future reconciliation. That was enough for now. The following months passed in a strange new rhythm. I threw myself into work, taking on bigger clients and expanding my portfolio. I started dating someone I'd met at the gym, a woman named Jessica who taught spin classes and had never heard of my family drama. It was refreshing, being with someone who knew me only as I was now, not as I'd been. I ran more. Joined a local running club for people with asthma and other breathing conditions. Heard stories from others who'd faced medical challenges, who'd dealt with family members who didn't understand or didn't care. Each story reminded me I wasn't alone in this experience. Derek and I had dinner every Sunday. It became our tradition. Sometimes we talked about deep things, trauma, healing, family dysfunction. Other times we just watched sports and argued about nothing. He'd become more than a cousin, he was my anchor. Through it all, I kept working on forgiveness. Not the cheap kind that prioritizes peace over justice, but the hard kind that acknowledges harm and releases its hold on you anyway. Some days were easier than others. The mediation happened on a cold February afternoon, 10 months after the court hearing. We met at a neutral location, a therapist's office downtown with comfortable chairs and soft lighting designed to ease tension. The mediator was a woman named Dr. Patricia Rodriguez, specializing in family reconciliation after trauma. My parents were there. Vanessa was there. I was there. We sat in a circle, nobody quite making eye contact. Dr. Rodriguez opened by establishing ground rules: no interrupting, no personal attacks, each person gets to speak without crosstalk. The goal wasn't resolution but communication. Vanessa, Dr. Rodriguez said, would you like to start? My sister cleared her throat. She'd brought notes, I noticed. Her hands trembled slightly holding the paper. I've been thinking a lot about why I did what I did, she began. Not as an excuse, but to understand it. I've been in therapy for almost a year now, and I've learned I have some pretty significant issues with control and resentment. She glanced at our parents, then at me. Growing up, I felt invisible. Marcus had asthma, and it became this big thing our family revolved around. I know that's not his fault. I know he didn't choose to be sick. But somewhere along the way, I started resenting him for it. Like his illness was taking something from me. Mom made a small sound. Dad squeezed her hand. And the longer I carried that resentment, the more twisted my thinking became, Vanessa continued. I started seeing Marcus's asthma as this advantage he had. Special attention, accommodations, sympathy. I convinced myself he was weak for needing help, that I was stronger for never needing it. She looked directly at me for the first time. The night I held your inhaler, I wasn't thinking about your safety. I was thinking about power. About proving to myself that I could control something. And her voice broke. That's inexcusable. Dr. Rodriguez let the silence sit for a moment. Marcus, would you like to respond? I took a breath. I appreciate you acknowledging that. But I need you to understand something. When you held that inhaler, when you laughed while I begged, you weren't just hurting me physically. You were breaking something fundamental. Trust. Safety. The basic assumption that family won't deliberately harm you. I know, Vanessa whispered. I don't think you do, I said. Not fully. Every time I use my inhaler now, I have this split-second panic. What if someone takes it? What if I'm vulnerable and someone decides to use that against me? You gave me that fear. Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I believe you're sorry. But sorry doesn't erase the damage. It just acknowledges it happened. Our mother spoke up then. Marcus, sweetheart, what can we do? How can we help fix this? I looked at her, this woman who'd raised us both, who'd read us bedtime stories and packed our lunches and tried her best with imperfect tools. She wanted a solution, a path forward. She wanted her family whole again. I don't know if it can be fixed, Mom, I said gently. Not the way it was before. But maybe we can build something new. Something healthier. How? Dad asked. Boundaries, I said. Clear ones that everyone respects. Continued therapy for all of us, individual and family. Accountability when someone messes up. And time. Lots of time. Dr. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. Those are good starting points. Let's talk about what those boundaries might look like. We spent the next 2 hours hammering out specifics. Vanessa would complete her full probation term and continue therapy afterward. Family gatherings would happen in public spaces for the foreseeable future. I wouldn't be pressured to spend one-on-one time with Vanessa until I felt ready. Our parents would stop trying to mediate between us and instead focus on their own relationships with each of us individually. It wasn't perfect. Several times, old patterns emerged, Mom trying to smooth over rough edges, Dad getting defensive about past parenting choices, Vanessa slipping into justification mode. But we caught ourselves, redirected, tried again. By the end, we'd established a framework. Not reconciliation, exactly. More like a cautious détente. As we left, Vanessa stopped me in the parking lot. Marcus? Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think you'll ever trust me again? I considered the question. Honest answer? I don't know. Maybe. But trust isn't given, Vanessa. It's earned. And that takes time. How much time? However long it takes. She nodded, accepting this. I'll keep working. For however long it takes. I watched her walk to her car, an old Honda she'd bought with money from a part-time job she'd gotten 2 months ago. She was trying. Really trying. Whether that would be enough remained to be seen. Spring came. Trees budded. Pollen counts rose. I adjusted my medication schedule and kept running. Jessica and I became more serious. I told her everything eventually, about Vanessa, about the legal case, about the complicated mess of family trauma. She listened without judgment, held me when I needed it, gave me space when I needed that instead. Your family's kind of a disaster, she said one night, half joking. Yeah, I agreed. But they're working on it. We're all working on it. That's all anyone can do, right? Just keep working on it. I thought about that a lot in the following weeks. The idea that healing is ongoing work, not a destination you arrive at. You don't wake up one day completely healed. You wake up and do the work, and then you wake up the next day and do it again. In May, I attended a support group for people dealing with family estrangement. Sat in a circle of strangers who understood in ways my friends couldn't. Heard stories of abuse, betrayal, complicated paths toward forgiveness or permanent separation. Each person's journey was different, but the underlying current was the same. The grief of losing a family member who's still alive. Does it get easier? Someone asked. A young woman, early 20s, crying quietly into a tissue. The group leader, a therapist named David, smiled sadly. It gets different. Some days easier, some days harder. But you learn to carry it. You learn to build a life that includes the pain but isn't defined by it. That resonated. I was building that life, brick by brick. Work I enjoyed. Relationships that felt healthy. Hobbies that brought genuine pleasure. The pain of what happened with Vanessa was still there, but it was becoming one thread in a larger tapestry rather than the whole picture. In July, Vanessa completed her community service. 200 hours, finished 3 weeks ahead of schedule. She'd not only met the requirements but exceeded them, volunteering additional hours beyond what the court mandated. Emily Chen called to tell me. Judge Sullivan was impressed, she said. Vanessa's case is officially closed. She's completed all terms of her probation successfully. That's good, I said. And I meant it. How are you doing with everything? Emily asked. Better. Not perfect, but better. That's realistic, she said. Trauma recovery isn't about reaching perfection. It's about reaching functionality. After we hung up, I sat with the news. Vanessa's legal consequences were over. The state had declared her debt paid. But the personal consequences, the rift in our family, the lost trust, the years of rebuilding ahead, those couldn't be resolved by a judge's decree. I called Derek. Vanessa finished her probation. How do you feel about that? Honestly? I don't know. Part of me thinks it wasn't long enough. Another part thinks maybe it was exactly what she needed. Both can be true, Derek said. Yeah. I'm starting to understand that a lot of contradictory things can be true at once. He laughed. Welcome to emotional maturity. It's confusing and uncomfortable. Thanks. I hate it. You'll get used to it. August marked 1 year since I'd moved into my apartment. I'd made it my own, photographs on the walls, plants on the windowsills, a home office setup that actually felt professional. It was small, but it was mine. I hosted a dinner party. Jessica, Derek, a few friends from my running club, a colleague I'd been working with on a major project. We ate pasta and argued good-naturedly about politics and laughed until my sides hurt. At one point, Derek pulled me aside. You seem happy. I think I am, I said, surprised by the realization. Not all the time. But more often than not. Good. You deserve that. So do you. When are you going to start dating again? He groaned. Don't start with me. We rejoined the group. Someone had put on music. Jessica was telling an embarrassing story about a spin class gone wrong. The apartment felt warm, lived in, safe. This was healing, I realized. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of joy alongside it. Not forgetting what happened, but building a life expansive enough to contain both the trauma and the recovery. In September, I received an invitation. My parents were renewing their vows for their 30th anniversary. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. The invitation specified that both Vanessa and I were invited, and there was no pressure to interact beyond basic civility. I almost declined. The thought of seeing Vanessa in a celebratory context, of pretending everything was fine for the sake of family photos, felt exhausting. But then I thought about my father's heart attack. About how quickly things can change, how people can disappear without warning. About the fact that my parents were trying, really trying, to respect boundaries while still maintaining connections with both their children. I RSVP'd yes. The ceremony was in my parents' backyard, under a white tent strung with lights. 30 people, mostly relatives I hadn't seen in years. They knew about the situation in vague terms, enough to be awkward but not enough to understand. Vanessa arrived late. She stood at the edge of the gathering, clearly uncertain whether she should be there. Our eyes met across the yard. I gave her a small nod. Permission to stay. The ceremony itself was simple. My parents read vows they'd written, talking about weathering storms and choosing each other daily. Mom cried. Dad's voice shook. I realized they were talking about more than just their marriage, they were talking about their family, about the hard year we'd all survived. During the reception, Vanessa approached me. Hi. Hi, I said. This is weird, she admitted. Yeah. Can we talk for a minute? Not about heavy stuff. Just talk. I hesitated, then nodded. We walked to the far corner of the yard, away from the crowd. I got a job, she said. Full-time position at the hospice. They offered it to me last week. That's great, I said, genuinely pleased. It's not what I imagined I'd be doing. But I like it. Helping people. It feels meaningful. Good. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Vanessa said, I know this doesn't fix anything. Us talking at a party. But I want you to know I think about what I did every single day. And every single day, I'm trying to be better than the person who did that. I looked at her, my sister, 5 years older but somehow seeming younger now. Humbled. Changed. Maybe. Keep trying, I said. That's all any of us can do. She nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked back toward the party. I stayed in the corner for a few more minutes, watching my family mingle and laugh and pretend normalcy until maybe, someday, it wouldn't be pretending anymore. Jessica found me there. You okay? Yeah, I said. I really am. She kissed my cheek. Let's get some cake. We rejoined the celebration. I ate cake with my cousin. I danced with my mother. I congratulated my parents on 30 years of marriage and meant it. And when the evening ended, I went home to my apartment, took my evening medication, and slept soundly for the first time in longer than I could remember. Healing isn't linear. It's messy and complicated and full of setbacks. But it's possible. Even when it seems impossible. Even when the person who hurt you is someone you're supposed to love unconditionally. You can set boundaries and still have hope. You can protect yourself and still leave the door open for change. You can acknowledge the harm and still believe in the possibility of something better. One breath at a time. One day at a time. One small choice toward healing at a time. That's all any of us can do.